Hello everyone, and here is the promised second part of the analysis of the new animated series The Amazing Digital Circus. I suggest to start very soon, but first I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like it, and don't forget to write your opinion about this series in the comments. Here we go. In the previous video, we finished that Pomni's hand started to glitch after the encounter with Regatha, so if you look closely, you will notice that in one of the scenes Pomni's hand looks absolutely normal, and I know why, and in a few minutes, you will know, and you will be shocked. Pomni, after talking to Regatha, decided to help her and went in search of Kane. But as soon as she started screaming and calling for help, only silence screamed back at her. Remember begins to open one door after another, and in each of them is something incredible. But I was only interested in one door. Remember the corridor where Regatha was talking to Pomni. So I was interested in a picture on the door. It wasn't crossed out to mean that the character is no longer with us, but this, let's call him Faceless, exists. And by opening one of the doors, Pomni made sure of it, though almost at the cost of her own life. After going through all the doors, Pomni was already disappointed, but then she heard a sound. She thought that Kane was there and ran to him, but it was not to be, as she was met by our updated Kaufmo. Remarkably, it was at this point that we were shown the world on behalf of the Glowinks. Remember this trio, after seeing the creature they didn't think of running away, they stayed where they were and learned that this place is the nest of the Glowink Queen. While they are talking, Kinger notices Zubul being rude to the other characters in her usual manner. This is noticed by Jax, who refuses to save her. Now get ready for the most interesting part of the show. Kinger tries to save Zubul and leaves his hands on her, while the Glowink Queen almost eats Zubul's head and Kinger's hands. Note that the star-shaped Glowink that gave Zubul's head to its queen started glitching after a few seconds, surprising all the other Glowinks. It turns out that Glowinks are just geometric shapes when they are born, but they can only become monsters when they come in contact with the queen. Now we understand where the giant monster Glowinks come from, but where did the Glowink Queen come from? If you have a guess, post it in the comments. It will be very interesting to read. Then we move to the surface, where Pomni escapes from Kaufmo, and the moment with the mirror is very important, because just look at our Pomni, she really can't believe what she has become and where she has arrived. She was just playing with VR glasses. Take a closer look at the moment with the red toy monkeys that Pomni accidentally released. Kaufmo didn't realize that they were toys until the last second, which means that the intelligence of these monsters is much lower than that of our heroes, and that can't be helped. Remember, in the last video, I talked several times about the door that only Pomni can see. I asked you to memorize it, and now comes one of the most important moments of the series. After some thought, Pomni opens this door and goes into some office, but the scary thing is that as time goes on, Pomni realizes that he is infinite as he opens door after door. While Pomni is trying to figure something out, Kaufmo has chosen his target, a red Glowink. Perhaps this is a reference to the Spanish corrida, in which the bull, like Kaufmo, reacts with particular ferocity to the color red. At the same moment, the Glowink Queen begins to scold her subordinates and talk about her plans to take over the entire digital circus. But at that very moment, the enraged Kaufmo falls on her back. But why did he attack his queen? You will find out in a few minutes, but from that moment on, the show turns into utter chaos. While Kaufmo is beating and destroying the Glowink Queen, Jax and Gangle are watching, but Kinger is running around like a hysterical little girl, screaming that he's scared and has to get out of this cave. Zubul, having spent some of her time here, points the others to the escalator. And it's near the escalator that we see Jax as the real bully. Only a weak character can do that, which Jax is, he just hides it well. Zubul brings up Pomni, who is still running around the office looking for something that will never end. It's obvious to the naked eye that with every new door opened, with every new room, the condition of our sweet and cheerful Pomni gets worse and worse. She begins to turn into the most real living skeleton, but then, despite the other doors in one of the rooms, her attention is drawn to a certain desk with a computer and VR glasses. Pomni begins to lose her mind. And as she walks into one of the rooms, she sees the logo of some company that says CNA. Again, we memorize this logo and continue to watch, because if I tell you now what this logo means, the rest of the viewing will not be so exciting. She finds a huge corridor in which she runs as if she were not Pomni, and with great effort she opens the last door and finds herself in a place we already know, the Void. Thanks to this, we learned what the Void is. Being in it, the character is frozen for a while and can't even move, simply being carried away in an unknown direction by gravitational forces. While everyone is in a state of complete terror, our circus administrator Kane is sitting in a restaurant with his friend, planning a delicious dinner. Notice that he is surrounded by the same creatures I told you about at the beginning of the video. I feel it is necessary to make a video about this category of characters because they really creep me out in a way. So, Kane and Bubble were having a nice chat when a notification came up on Wacky Watch that something was going wrong, and just a few seconds later, the radar spotted someone in a void. Kane dropped everything he was doing and went to save our Pomni, who was in a state of anabiosis, and another few minutes or hours, and the void would have consumed him. but Kane made it in time. But note that even after Kane teleported Pomni to the amazing digital circus, she still couldn't regain consciousness for a while. But Kane was more interested in why there was such a mess. Our trio of Zooble-headed wonders approached them and said, "Kaufmo abstracted." These words really caused surprise and a little horror in Kane's eyes. But I don't think it's that simple. Notice the fake emotion he used to show those emotions I mentioned earlier. I think he knew before all the other characters knew. He just didn't tell anyone. Also in that moment, we saw the true power of Kane, as he so easily moved Kaufmo around the area and then dropped him into the so-called basement, which is full of monsters just like Kaufmo. They may have all lived in this circus at one time, and they are exactly the characters whose images we saw, but they have been crossed out. After a short speech, Kane announces that everyone has successfully completed the task and will be rewarded with a magical feast. Pomni obviously wants to refuse to participate. After that, the camera slowly starts to move away, and we first see a circus, then a void, and then the void expands more and more until it hits the monitor screen that Pomni has already seen once in the Endless Office. It's also worth mentioning that before the whole celebration, Kane told everyone that they would all like to have some kind of door to exit through, but he hasn't finished this project yet, so he won't show it, and also mentioned that if they go through some unknown door, the void will be waiting for them. But somehow it seems to me that all this was said on purpose, so that in case of what happened, no one would dare to try to escape. Remember I told you to memorize the company logo that says C and A? That may have been the biggest clue in the show all along. This labyrinth was a sort of middle ground between the real world and the virtual world. You can tell by the computer, which looks exactly like the one Pomni apparently played on before entering this amazing digital circus. And next to it were the VR goggles that also took part in this journey. So, back to the logo with the mysterious C and A. I think many of you have realized that the letter C is the first letter of the name Kane, which means that the letter A is also an abbreviation of a name. Let's listen closer, because this clue will tell us Pomni's real name. C and A is a reference to two biblical characters, Cain and Abel. So far, it seems clear, but why? Because the names of the biblical character Cain and our administrator are almost identical. But what does Pomni have to do with it? In short, I am sure that Pomni is the same administrator as Cain. Maybe I will make a whole issue about it and prove to you literally frame by frame my version. But first, let's find out Pomni's name. With Cain, we've sorted it out, and that leaves Abel. But Abel is a man, and Pomni is a girl. So we get the real name, Abelin. Let me give you an example of one of the facts that Pomni, we are still more familiar with it than Abelin, is the administrator of an amazing digital circus. For example, I will look at the very hand that stopped glitching at a certain point. I asked you to remember that. So when Ragatha told Pomni that she needed Cain to heal her, at the same moment Pomni's arm stopped glitching. I mean, what's the big deal? But if you think about it, you can easily see a pattern. As soon as Ragatha said that Cain could fix it, Pomni thought that she could be healed, so her arm healed, but as soon as she stopped thinking about it, it went right back to normal. If you want to know more and more about the amazing digital circus, let me know, and I will say goodbye to you all.